Okay, this is something I wanted to demonstrate before posting a large number of results, although in fairness there's already some 30, almost 40 results up on my website. This is a way of testing input lag, which is using phototransistors. So previously I'd used the light-dependent resistor method. It made sense, except for the known limitation of light-dependent resistors, which is their quite slow response time. Initially the results seemed somewhat promising, but over time it was pretty clear that the slow response was going to affect the results, and so I gave up and started again. So very quickly, to demonstrate what's going on, this is a little PCB, very simple resistor. There is a phototransistor on the other side, and so that's essentially it's hard to get it to focus at the right point, a LED in reverse. So when it receives light, it allows more voltage to flow. It's essentially an LDR, but with a much quicker response time. On my own little PCB, you might be able to see it's a bit hard. I've got this frame, so 8mm threaded rods, 6mm threaded rods, 3D printed brackets with nuts to hold everything in the right position. I've got it sat precisely over the kind of top and the bottom icon of the screen, and I can basically pull it out, check that it's in the right spot, so that's sitting happily over the red icon, and then without moving anything I can replace the phototransistor. There are two of them so that I can measure top and bottom, and that means that we can check the frequency of the monitor. We can compare two different areas of the screen, make sure that if there are erroneous results, that it's whether that's a true or a false result by kind of comparing two different areas. Quickly to scroll down, sorry if there's noise doing this. So this is excuse my leg, I'll try and get that out of frame. This is the Arduino that's powering everything. So it has a Arduino Giga underneath. It has a Giga display on top. It's got again a PCB there. It's got all of my video interrupt stuff here underneath, but I don't need it for this method. There are 4 buttons, or 4 kind of timings, and then there's also LEDs that can match that, and there's lots of other settings. The way it works, it'll send out a signal to, once again, custom PCB. This is a Brook UFB Fusion. I've got 3 rows of pins here, so buttons that are held, and so that's the hard kick, and then I can trigger the medium kick to go at a set timing. And so for this one, it is the blue wires, the blue timing here, so on at 0, off at 33 milliseconds, so essentially held for 2 frames, and I can do that with 2 different controllers. So quite a bit going on. This tells me what the LDRs are reading, which is reasonably close, and then this screen will present all of the results. It also saves it to a USB. It also outputs it to the computer. So I'll just quickly scroll up and across, and so that should be showing where it will turn up on the Arduino IDE. So quite a bit going on. What I'll do, I'll just make sure that we're looking at the right place, and I'll get it started. So this is going to take a bit of time. It is essentially 1,000 trials. It zeroes itself, so it spends 201 milliseconds having a look at the red icon and essentially saying what's the highest value that I've read, what's the lowest value that I've read, and uses that to set high and low, minimum, maximum reference ranges. It's doing that for the top and the bottom. Having kind of zeroed itself for that 200 milliseconds, then the button's pressed, and it will look to see how long does it take to find a value that's outside of those ranges. You can set it, like if you know that the value is going to be high, you can ignore any lower values. And so you can also set a margin. So for example, say you zero it and you get values of 7 to 11 coming out. Rather than kind of accepting 12 or 6 as a significant change, you can set it so that it has to change at least 2 to hopefully avoid any small variations that weren't quite captured in that 200 milliseconds from triggering an inappropriately early result. In the same way, you can set boundaries. So for this one, again, a bit hard to see, but any values less than 30 milliseconds will be ignored, and any values more than 150 milliseconds will be ignored. I calculate the timing two different ways. So you might be able to read there's a 22 and a 79 there. What that means is that the top value is 22% of the way down the screen, and the bottom value is 79% of the way down the screen. So one of my pet peeves that I've talked about before is that sometimes people report input lag, but they won't kind of mention where they're measuring. So is it the top of the screen with the life bar? Is it the bottom of the screen with the command history? Is it the middle of the screen with the muzzle flash? And I've always thought you should be calibrating and referencing where you measured and then coming back to a comparable point. So what I would do is I'd work out the top phototransistor value, the bottom phototransistor value, and then if the top one's at 22% of the way down the screen, the bottom one's at 79% of the screen, approximately there's like a quarter before that and a quarter after that. So if it takes 4 milliseconds to go from that top value to that bottom value, then it must take another 2 milliseconds to go back to the top of the screen and another 2 to go to the bottom of the screen. With 120 Hertz output, 8 milliseconds per frame, that's about right. Okay, so it helps in that the InZone M3, and that's the one that I'm doing most of my testing on, is a 240 Hertz monitor. But, is it displaying at 240 Hertz? Is it 4.16 milliseconds per frame? Or is it displaying at 120 Hertz or with 60 Hertz contents? Is it spending 16.66 milliseconds per frame? So we can kind of deduce all of that from these values. And again, it means we can kind of reference back to the top of the screen. So the way I present my results is kind of the calculated top, the measured top, so I guess the calculated right at the top of the screen, the measured thing a quarter of the way down the screen, the measured thing about a 3/4 of the way down the screen, and then the calculated value at the bottom of the screen. The ones at the top should correlate somewhat to the video interrupt method results, because that's where I always kind of calibrate back to, is the top of the screen for those results. And it also, as you would appreciate, the advantage of doing it this way is that we can use 120 Hertz. We can use VRR. We can do some degree of interpretation for vertical sync on and off. And we can do up to 240 Hertz to see what effect that has, again, mainly for PC. And then we can get meaningful comparisons for how the same content is displayed with all of the different mode settings. So with PlayStation 5's VRR automatic and apply to unsupported games, and it's 120 Hertz automatic and off, and the same for the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S. So you can look to see what effect all of those settings have on the input lag. VSync is tricky, and so obviously, what you would ideally do is measure a value at the top, measure a value at the bottom, and then calculate what the top of the screen would be and what the bottom of the screen would be. But if the bottom of the screen value is coming out sooner than the one at the top, then your calculations will be off. And so I'll look to kind of demonstrate that in one of the Probably one of the conditional formatting values for my results publishing. Once this is all done, it'll save the results, it'll display the results on my Giga display here, and then it will also it will record all of that to USB, so I can copy that across for saving for showing later, and then potentially easily kind of display that on the on that results file. So hopefully fairly soon we're going to come up to the end of the kind of 6 minutes of inputs. So because it's 200 milliseconds on, or 201 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds off, it should be coming up towards the end soon. So I do 1,000 tests, just because that's a nice round big number. And if we're doing 2.5 tests a second, then hopefully that's 400, and that is time just there. So the results look pretty good, almost. If we scroll down, I'll read them out, and I can obviously print out the file later. So it's 55083 at the top. It is 56779 for the, so that's the top of the screen, which is a calculated value. 56779 is the measured value, which is 22% of the way down the screen. 61173 is the measured value, which is 79% of the way down the screen, and then 62791 is the calculated value right at the bottom of the screen. I don't know what, well, I know what the vertical blanking is for a 1080p screen. I think it's 36 top and 9 at the bottom, but I'm kind of ignoring that for this, although potentially it will have some value. The way that I get these ones, and they're a little bit susceptible, is that I just take the lowest value, the highest value, which are these, and then I work out, well, halfway in between that's the average, which plugs into there, same calculation. The problem is if you've got a very low value like this one, it'll throw them off. So I kind of did that so that I might not have to do as many measurements, but I'm not sure of the real value of it. Going ahead, so this 4394, that's the average time it takes to get from the top, I might show the screen here, that's the time it takes to get from the top to the bottom, and then you can expand that out, and so we're getting about 7708. So it's saying that it takes about 7.7 milliseconds to go from the top to the bottom. If it takes 16.66 for a 60 Hertz display, should be about 8.33 for a 120 Hertz display, and that would probably fit. At the moment, input delay reduction is off, and the PS5 has VRR enabled, so that could potentially explain why instead of getting 8.33, we're getting a bit of a lower value there. And that's about it. The other thing, it tells us that out of our 1,000 tests, there were 995 that were meaningful at the top, 987 meaningful at the bottom, which is pretty good. And that's about it. So I would say this is probably about the kind of results that I was expecting. This fits in fairly closely with my previous camera-based method. And hopefully I'll be able to upload this video, and then it will probably answer a lot of the questions that people might have about the testing method, although at almost 15 minutes I can imagine people might not sit through it, and I'll still try to answer the questions as they come. But essentially this is the way that I plan to do my testing. Just quickly, if we scroll across here, and hopefully I've got it, I can't actually see my OBS screen when I do this. You've got all of the results here, which will be saved to the USB. So as you scroll up, you can see every of the 1,000 tests that we just did saved there. Number of times we looped, timing, just a quick checkly. Yeah, so you can see 59 milliseconds, 60 milliseconds, 61, 62, 63, and then 48, 48, 49, 51, 52, 53. So you would expect for, I guess, a 60 Hertz input reading that you'd go from about 48 to 63, so about 15, 16 milliseconds there, and that checks out. Other than that, it'll give you all of your results and tell you what all of your settings were. And so that all looks about right. Super. Alright, I'll leave it at that, and hopefully there'll be a whole bunch of results coming soon.